Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, StrangeNet here. So today I want to talk about Siege Green update that is coming to EVE Online very shortly, and my thoughts and feelings on this in general. One thing I do want to just get out of the way is that I think the reduction in prices for said ships, the capitals, super capitals, and some of the battleships are definitely a good thing. Don't get that confused with what I'm about to say, because again, some of the values of these ships are incredibly high and probably a little out of whack with where they probably should be. But with that said, it's the way that these changes potentially are being implemented where I have a slight issue. So it's been pretty much a year since the industrial changes that were initially implemented and set us down this road to massive amounts of change within industry. Now, as I said prior, industry hasn't had a lot of big changes to it over the years, so this was a fundamental shift of the overall foundations of industry and how basically everything fitted together. So it was a monumental shift, and basically it created a lot of opportunities. There were a lot of new blueprints, reactions were needed to build ships, different components, wormholes, exploration, you name it. Basically you needed the whole shebang in order to be able to build ships, or at least for larger ships anyway. And CCP initially solved this idea that yes, they needed to be changed, ships needed to be they needed to have levers that they could change the price of ships as required, because capital proliferation was a big issue, and basically we were seeing Titan after Titan after Titan pumped out by nullsec, and it was becoming a little bit of an issue. So the idea was that they would have these changes where they could adjust the prices as they saw fit. Now that kind of flies in the face of the sandbox, but again, for the general health of the game, I can understand where and what they were trying to do. That if they thought that capitals, for instance, Titans were 50 billion and they weren't very happy with that, they could crank up some of the components that went into that, or make them less available, and therefore that would push the price naturally of Titans higher. And if they thought that battleships were too expensive, they could adjust XYZ, and that would bring the price of battleships lower. The overall premise was good, and again, for the general health of the game, it seemed like whether it was a good idea or not is open to speculation, but I could see what they were trying to do, and it made a lot of sense. So a year later, obviously, we have the Siege Green blog that's come out, and basically, yeah, they have taken a sledgehammer to the nut. And this is where I have the issue. And a lot of people, again, in the last video that I did, had a lot to say about this in general. That one of the things was that people have had more than enough time to be able to make a profit from it, get out. But again, that's not necessarily true. That's only true if you were here at the time of the patch dropping last year. So if you're a new person to New Eden and you're just getting into industry, this is pretty rough for you. And to give you some examples of that, and again, you probably shouldn't be doing this if you are relatively new, but so the capital core temperature regulator. Now this is a component that's needed for capital ships and takes quite a lot of building. But the general issue that I have with this, let's just go to any old facility. 113 days to get to ME10 and 113 days to get to TE10 or 20. So what, we're looking at 226 days. So basically, even if you'd have gotten this just after the patch had dropped and decided that yes, fine, I want to build these, you're looking at 220 days to get this up to speed. Now, obviously, you can use different stations, but that's by the by. If you wanted to do this in an NPC station, 220 days. So that doesn't leave you a lot of room. So basically, you've taken all this time. This is one of the issues that I have with this, that things in industry take a long time to get going, to implement, to get your BPOs where you want them, to get the goods into place, to get the BPOs researched. Yes, you can buy them off the market, but that's by the by. If you want to do it yourself, it takes a long... We're not talking a few days, we're not talking a few weeks, we're talking months. And in this case, we're talking over half a year. And to all of a sudden have these massive changes, because, so I say, now we're looking that capital cores need a lot less stuff to go into them. We're going to need a lot less capital cores into the ships, and therefore we're going to need a lot less of these BPOs in general, because obviously they're already seeded, they're already out there. So all the people that basically bought them and have been researching them since 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, probably about what, August? All these people here have been researching this BPO for, I won't say nothing, because potentially you can sell it, but if they intended to build for it because they needed it, then, well, you don't need anywhere near as many, and basically a lot of these people will have a BPO that they can't really do a great deal with all of a sudden. And that's definitely not something you want to be promoting in your game, that people that are taking the long, slow walk into industry, getting their stuff together, have the rug pulled out of them from under them before they've even reached the end. That's really sucks. And again, it's... Let's go for the auto integrities now. Again, I've got a huge issue with these. So at the moment, these take roughly, I think it's 10 minutes to build. Let's have a look, see. So 20 minutes to build one. You will now build 3 of these at a time with the new... after the new patch eventually drops, and ships themselves, the Naglfar for instance, now takes 3 times less of these. So let's just take a little look at this. And again, this is a great example of falling off the cliff, and it was entirely predictable that anybody that had been building auto integrity preservation seals were going to have a rough time as soon as these patch notes dropped. Because you need 3 times less. Oh, sorry, you're making 3 times more now. So at the moment, people are manufacturing, give or take, what, 40,000? Yeah, it's about an average of 40,000. So now that we're making 3 times more of them, all of a sudden that average is now 120,000. Fantastic. So all the people that have been slowly pumping these out, because they do take a bit of time to produce, and obviously the longer it takes, the more people you need to do it, and that's not a bad thing. Now, the general issues were that you needed... they were bulky. A lot of the stuff for building capital ships are bulky. Water is a great example. The auto integrity seals themselves are also quite bulky. So it's not the time that's the issue. And again, a great analogy would be that if you're mining, if you've got 10 miners and 100 rocks, then you've got more than enough rocks to satiate the miners. Where if you've got 100 miners and you've only got 10 rocks, you're going to run out of rocks very quickly, and them 100 people have got nothing to do. And again, this holds completely true for industry, that by making these things faster... So I roughly did the maths, and at the moment it takes 22 characters on average to pump these out. Now, after the... I can't remember if that was characters or accounts. I think it was accounts, 22 accounts. So 11 runs per account. And after these changes, you're going to need 4. So 4 people will be able to pump out what currently 22 characters do, which is nuts. So basically, you've just absolutely gutted the market for auto integrity seals. And you can see here the price is reflecting that it's just dropped off a cliff because, well, to back that up even more, what goes into auto integrity seals, we've got the reinforced carbon. So reinforced carbon, let's have a look, and as you'd expect, has dropped off a cliff. Look at that, beautiful. Well done. Congratulations. Down 10%, but this has a knock-on effect to everybody else, because what's needed for manufacturing the reinforced carbons? Well, all in all, you need atmospheric gas. So that's just atmospheric gases. Fantastic. So let's have a look what atmospheric gases goes into. So goes into the oxy organic solutions. That is for reinforced carbon. Doesn't actually tell you what else it goes into, but yeah, that's for reinforced carbon. Poly settings for reinforced carbon. So you've got a good proportion there, but all of a sudden, sorry for, yeah, the top and the third one down. Now atmospheric gases are pretty much, you're going to, the market prior was high. You needed a lot of atmospheric gases to be able to basically supply the sheer amount of numbers of the reinforced carbon to go into the auto integrities. Well, again, you need 3 times less now. So, and again, you can see it. You can see it here that it's been climbing slowly, and yeah, it started dropping a bit before the news. It dropped back down, leveled off, and then obviously since the news, it's crashing hard because, well, a lot of these gases I got from high-sec moons, the R4s, I think it is, and basically you're going to need a third of the materials that you need in regards to building the auto integrities. So again, the price has only got one way to go. It's going to crash hard. I expect it probably to be half the value of this in a few months' time, because again, anybody that's mining in high-sec, I think it's atmospheric gases and sulfur. I can't remember the other one, but there's another one. And again, yeah, what were you going to do with it now? There's no demand for it because, yeah, there's just no demand. Ah, but alas, StrangeNet, I hear you say, there's going to be more destruction. There's going to be more stuff being blown up because things are cheaper. Well, so let's have a look at the graph, shall we? So we can see here that March 2022 of the latest report from CCP in regards to destruction. Destruction hovers around about between the, 1 trillion and 1.5 trillion ISK mark, and pretty much is 1.25 trillion ISK on average every month. Some months has a slight dip, some it has a bit of an increase, but all in all, it's pretty steady. So obviously, yeah, it's been like that since scarcity and all these changes, really, hasn't it? Well, no, because if we check back to end of 2016, start of 2017, you can see here that the blue line is still in between the 1 trillion and the 1.5 trillion. It's always been this case. And bearing in mind, in 2016, we had more players playing, so just because ships are slightly cheaper doesn't mean that people become even less risk averse. We still have the same mentality that people don't like losing ships. Now, it's not to say that they won't put them in riskier situations, which potentially can lead to a fight and more destruction, but all in all, the graphs show pretty constant, steady, and I couldn't get any further back. I did try 2016, and it looks about the same, but the graph is really fuzzy, and I didn't really want to put it up because it looked awful, but by all means, go check them yourself. So yeah, prices are going to come down, but destruction will stay roughly the same. Yes, there'll be spikes, there'll be troughs, but all in all, makes no difference. So the argument that obviously things are cheaper, more things will get blown up, goes completely out the window, and that basically we just have more stuff that the auto integrity seals, which now produce 3 times as much. Basically, you don't have 3 times as many places to go, so basically anybody that's got them BPOs or has been producing them is now dead in the water. It's pretty much same with the reinforced carbons, the life supports, the core integrity preservation seals, pretty much all the new stuff that was introduced only a year ago. And again, don't misunderstand the fact that cheaper prices aren't necessarily a bad thing, and I think it's generally needed. I think, what was it, 400-500 billion ISK for a Titan is absolutely insane. Although Titans are endgame and probably should be really expensive, but dreadnoughts and carriers were insanely priced. Looking, 9 billion ISK for a dreadnought? Okay, that's a bit nuts. And faction battleships. Now, faction battleships, again, I haven't done the maths on this, I haven't looked it up, and I can't really be bothered, but are coming down substantially in price from what they were. 1.2 down to, 900? Now, I haven't looked at the new prices for battleships recently, but again, I still think it's underneath this. I'd like to see battleships, faction battleships specifically, around about the 120 billion, 120 billion, sorry, 1.2 billion ISK mark, I think is a pretty decent place for them. And this is because faction battleships shouldn't be the go-to battleship for the vast majority of things. The faction battleship is there because it's better than the standard. Let's just have a look at the Raven, shall we? So 300 yen, probably quite expensive. These are going to drop as well somewhat in price, so keep an eye on that. But yeah, these should be, and again, these prices probably could do with coming down a little bit. But your general battleship should be the battleship that you go to for your general stuff. And again, the fact that faction battleships weren't that much more expensive. And again, the graph unfortunately doesn't go back quite far enough. I can't remember how much faction battleships were before the increases. I want to say about 500 million. And at the time, normal battleships were 300 million. So for an extra 200 million, you get a substantially better ship, and therefore normal battleships are basically overlooked completely because faction battleships do pretty much it all better and for not that much of a price increase. Hence why I quite like the idea of there being quite, if you want to just randomly throw ships at things, then Tech 1 battleships should be the norm. And again, if you want a special fleet or something to do PvE in or this, that, and the other, then faction battleship should be the thing that you aspire to do. Shouldn't be the norm. In my opinion, anyway. That's how I see it. That, again, it should be special. It shouldn't be your instant go-to because, again, you know, why fly a normal Drake when you can have a Navy Drake for an extra 25, 30, 40 million ISK? You know, there should be a difference between the normal price and the current, the faction ship price. Now, having them nigh on at 2 billion ISK, I think, was a bit high. And again, we've got now the Tech 2 battleships also dropping quite substantially in price. So these are probably going to get a lot more use down from the 2 billion ISK mark from when they really had their change. So yeah. And again, don't misunderstand me. Prices coming down isn't necessarily a bad thing, or changes to the it's the way that it's been handled and the way that it's gone from one. We had relative stability for years and years and years, and then this massive change for a year. People were just still whining and moaning about, but we're getting more used to it. It was becoming the new norm. And then all of a sudden, the rug's been pulled under us again, and we're back in this era of chaos, which, again, brings opportunities, but industry, as I said earlier, takes time and effort. You don't just, and again, it's not like trading a skill or getting into a ship where you buy it, you realize that it's not quite what you wanted, and you can just sell it again, you know, and that takes you a couple of weeks tops. You know, it takes months and months to get production and things into place, and it takes a long-term vision. So anybody that's willing to take the time and the effort to do that should be rewarded. There needs to be stability and an incentive to do it. Again, people have seen these changes and have gone, right, yeah, fair enough. I need to adapt, get behind it. So they've got behind it. They've bought the stuff. They've bought into it. They've taken the time, the effort, the weeks, the months to train up the blueprints. Now to have the rug pulled from under them again and be in a state of limbo. And again, if you've only just started the game, that really sucks. You know, I think since the start of this, I'm down about, I reckon, 10 billion ISK. Now, don't feel sorry for me. I've made an absolute shed ton of ISK from these changes before. So yeah, a little bit of a pain in the opposite direction is probably karma coming back round, but you know, for anybody else that has just been getting into industry and has been throwing themselves in there, and again, you know, I promote industry, so I don't like to see people screwed over by changes that have been incredibly heavy-handed. They could have implemented this slowly but surely and just added it bit by bit over the next couple of months. You know, said that they are going to start adjusting some of the prices, and we could have had, instead of this instant pain, well, I suppose we could have had long-term pain gain. But again, they could have monitored it and slowly have altered some of this stuff. And again, it's like the auto integrity seals, which I keep coming back to. increased the amount that's being made by 3 times, and you've reduced the ship inputs by 3 times. So why did we need that? Why couldn't we just kept it potentially how? Because again, that screws over people that are moon mining in high sec. That's never a good thing. It screws over people that are building these, because now you don't need anywhere near as many people to build them in order to satiate the market. We've got, so that means less industry, we've got less miners, less things for everybody to do. And again, if you've got less people, and again, I tried to make this analogy earlier, but I think I failed, so I'm going to do it again. When you've got more people involved in industry, they have to spread out. So, as I put it with the miners, so in order to satiate the market for the auto integrities, if it takes 100 characters, that's 100 characters that aren't producing other stuff, which leaves other areas for other people to fill. That's not a bad thing. That gives people more opportunities to get into industry. You don't want one character being able to produce everything that New Eden needs in a single afternoon. You need to make it, you need lots and lots of people required in order to satiate the market. And reducing that basically means there's less opportunities for other people in other areas, or less, opportunities for people to get into industry, because now the people that have currently already industry have a bigger advantage because they have the alts and they can satiate the market, and then they can move on to a different market, and so on and so on. And you could argue the fact that obviously, you can just have more and more alts from one person. But again, after a certain alt amount, it becomes harder and harder to manage that many alts. So you could have 100 alts doing industry, and I'm sure there's some nut around there that has 100 alts doing industry, but it becomes incredibly frustrating, annoying, and hard work. I find it hard managing 9 characters. So again, that doesn't mean you can't do more than 9, but that's pretty much my limit. I don't usually go over 10 characters total, and that's between reactions, invention, and manufacturing. And again, it's very rare that all 10 of them are actually doing maximum capacity, because A, I can't be bothered, and B, trying to handle the logistics of that is just a nightmare. It becomes overwhelming for myself. Now, it's not to say that there aren't, as I said, head cases out there that love doing that kind of thing and do it on an industrial scale, but there does become a point where it's just not manageable anymore, and therefore the idea that you can just make more alts and just keep doing it, there is a limit to what people can and will endure, and what they find fun, and to the point where it becomes more of a job than a game. So making it easier and quicker. Easier is not a bad thing. Quicker is the bad part. Now, and again, it affects so many different people, and this is going to have huge knock-on effect. And again, this all comes back to the scarcity problem that was created and didn't really need to be created in the first place. Again, that's a rant for a different day, but we have come full circle basically, and it's just it's screwing a lot of people over. And again, yes, we will get cheaper ships from this. Yes, that is potentially a good thing. As we've seen, that's not going to create more destruction, so therefore it's not going to create more demand in the market. And now we've got more than enough people to fill the market 6-7 times over for the current stuff that is being produced, and therefore prices of them items can only go down from this point. And that leaves less opportunities for pretty much everybody involved. And that's the general issue that I have with this change implementation that is coming, that it affects so many people on so many levels, and it didn't need to be this way. There were other ways of doing it. Again, making some of the components small. And again, it even affects people making PI. PI has just been decimated overnight. So everybody that's been training characters to do PI because prices have been going up, this, that, and the other, good luck. That's about to drop horribly in the vast majority of areas. And again, that therefore concentrates more people into other areas, because, well, now you need vastly less water. Now, I'm no expert in PI, so take all of this with a grain of salt, because I'm pretty sure the water comes from PI. So all of a sudden you need, I don't know, we'll say 100 people less making water for PI. So that means they go into other areas of PI. So we'll say robotics, just for instance, and therefore that will drop the price of robotics and other things, because now all of a sudden you've got lots of characters spread over lots of areas, all of a sudden contracting. You've still got the same number of characters that are able to do PI, but now they are concentrated into a smaller area, and that naturally forces prices down, because now we have oversaturation in them areas. It's frustrating to see this level of the first change was good. It added more areas. Now, that's not to say that prices were good and that it couldn't have been implemented better, but it created a lot of opportunities and new areas for people to expand and move into. This is a huge contraction of that. And that, in my opinion, is not a good thing. Less opportunities, less things to do in the game, or less areas to explore, because now all of a sudden the vast majority of them new areas are no longer worth it. And yeah, anything that creates less in the game is never a good thing. It's not a way that I want to see CCP go, really. There needs to be more opportunities, because again, people have PI alts. That's good for CCP. That creates more accounts. That's more people doing stuff. It's more people in space, more people moving stuff, more people doing stuff. And again, it's really frustrating to see this huge U-turn that we find ourselves in. And again, yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. And again, it's going to affect a lot of people. And I know a lot of people are obviously very happy with the lower ship costs that are coming. You can now start buying capitals again, which you will now keep in your hangar, and very rarely ever get out, but at least you can say you own one, which will make a lot of people happy, because as we've looked at, the destruction won't change a great deal, so the vast majority will become trophy hangars and will never get used, or you'll be dropping 100 dreads now on a lone roaming battleship. Yay, everybody's having fun. So I think I've rambled and moaned and groaned enough there, but just to reiterate, it is frustrating when these big changes come, and then these big changes come back again to undo some of the things that were implemented. And it's not that CCP shouldn't necessarily try new things and undo them if they deem them necessary, or that they are bad for the game and are having a detrimental effect on people. And again, there's been a lot of outcry that ship prices have been too high, and this is the case, but there were better ways of dealing with that than what we have been given now, and these new changes and the things that this was going to affect. So with that, thanks for listening. Thanks for your time. I'd love to hear your comments, as always, in the comments section. Say hi, whatever. And yeah, with that, I'll speak to you again soon.